Get $10 billion ready, then vanish. We'll make sure you encounter the underworld's horrors first if you don't pay. Justin, who appeared to be the leader, surrounded Miss Harrington and me with his Mafia members as he spoke. They must have been regularly extorting money by utilizing this strategy, overwhelming their victim with numbers. Beside me, I sensed Miss Harrington shivering a little. Not only was their method of earning money shameful, but it was also completely pitiful to threaten a woman. Unless they were transferred to a rehabilitation center and taught a hard lesson, these individuals would not change. It seems that Justin understood that I was not going to comply with his requests. He mumbled to his troops, rolling his shoulders, "Let's take him down all at once." I cracked my neck and stepped forward as they closed in on me. Henry is my name. I'm in my 40s and serve as the CEO of an 8-company chauffeur. I work for Miss Harrington, a savvy entrepreneur who started a startup in her 30s and swiftly expanded it into a large corporation. Despite facing discrimination from male superiors and unequal negotiations due to her gender, she has been able to grow her business, which is sufficient evidence of her abilities, especially for someone like myself who isn't very knowledgeable about business. Above all, she is an honest individual who shows regard and respect for even mid-career hires like me. She has good relations with her business partners and, of course, is popular with her staff. Being employed by someone like her makes me feel fortunate. I rubbed my elbow, which was still tight from a previous injury, and got ready for another day of cautious driving. "Good morning." I smiled as I said, "Looking forward to working with you today," to Miss Harrington. It was returned by her as usual. "Good morning. I appreciate you arriving so early. Please drive carefully as always and allow us plenty of time as I have a crucial business meeting today." I made sure she was sitting comfortably before softly shutting the door of the black luxury automobile. She opened her laptop and got to work as soon as I sat down in the driver's seat and looked in the rearview mirror. In addition to making sure she was safe, I also made sure there was as little noise and vibration as possible so she could concentrate on her task. On occasion, she struck up a conversation with me, and I made sure to keep it light and interesting. That was part of my work too. Although we were on schedule, if we kept up our current pace, we might arrive earlier than expected, which would be inconvenient for our hosts. I chose to visit a local convenience store because Miss Harrington also said that she wanted a drink. While I went inside to get her customary black coffee, I requested her to wait in the car. However, as I returned with the coffee, I was met with an alarming sight. A group of 5 rough-looking men had surrounded the black luxury car where Miss Harrington was seated. "Excuse me, is something the matter?" I called out. One of the men, his voice hoarse from years of drinking, responded in a threatening tone. "That's a pretty fancy car. Is it yours? You must have a lot of money." He stepped in close, invading my personal space as his lackeys chuckled, egging him on. "Justin, don't just go swinging right away." So his name was Justin. I kept my voice calm as I addressed him. "This isn't my car. I'm just a company driver. We're on our way to a business meeting, so if you'll excuse us." I had hoped to settle things peacefully, but of course, that wasn't going to happen. "Hold it," Justin growled, grabbing my arm with a forceful yank. He pulled me toward him, causing my paper cup of coffee to spill. As I wiped my arm with a handkerchief, I sighed internally, realizing this was going to be a hassle. If this dragged on any longer, it would only cause trouble for Miss Harrington. I raised my voice slightly, locking eyes with Justin as I spoke. "I don't have time to deal with you. Move out of the way, or this is going to turn into a real problem for you." For a brief moment, the thug stiffened at the change in my demeanor. However, as Justin regained his composure, he suddenly started laughing. His lackeys, now feeling more at ease, clutched their stomachs and let out crude, mocking laughter, joining him in ridiculing us. "A problem? Huh. And what exactly do you think is going to happen? Why don't you enlighten us? I'd say we're the ones who specialize in trouble. With that, Justin grabbed me by the collar. I didn't want this to escalate further, but considering our schedule, it would be best to handle this quickly. I couldn't allow Miss Harrington's company to suffer any losses because of these lowlives. However, if I were the one to make the first move, it could reflect poorly on the company since I was still on duty. As I was weighing my options and steeling myself for action, the rear passenger door suddenly opened, and Miss Harrington stepped out. Enough. If you don't let go of him right now, I'll call the police. You're really going to call the cops? You do know who you're messing with, right? You think you can just call the police on the Mafia and walk away unscathed. The rear windows of the car were tinted with a special film, making it difficult to see if anyone was inside. Justin and his Mafia members had assumed the car was empty, so they were visibly startled when Miss Harrington emerged. The moment she mentioned the police, Justin quickly withdrew his hand from my collar. From his reaction, it was clear that they were indeed a local mafia involved in shady dealings. Getting tangled up with guys like them was the last thing we needed. I straightened my collar, nodded respectfully to Miss Harrington, and gestured for her to return to the car. As I walked back to the driver's seat, I glanced sideways at Justin before settling in and gripping the steering wheel for a moment. I worried that he might do something reckless, like jumping onto the hood of the car, but he merely stood there, staring at me and the vehicle. Seeing that he wasn't making any further moves, I decided it was safe enough to drive away and head to our destination. On the way, I apologized to Miss Harrington for the trouble and for failing to bring her the coffee I had intended. I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. If it weren't for your quick thinking, things could have gotten messy. Also, I spilled the coffee, so if you don't mind, I'd like to stop by another convenience store to get you a new one. I had wiped the cup clean with a handkerchief, but there was no way I could offer her something that had been spilled. As I glanced at the GPS to locate the nearest store, Miss Harrington picked up the coffee I had placed in the drink holder and spoke in a bright voice. "This coffee is just fine. Thank you. And honestly, I was really impressed by how you stood your ground against those big guys without flinching. Seeing you like that gave me the courage to step out of the car and say what I did. Truth is, I was shaking inside. Miss Harrington was kind and had a strong sense of justice. There was no way she could have just sat back and watched. But the fact that I had put her in a dangerous situation made me feel deep regret. Even though it was an unexpected encounter, there would always be ill-mannered people and troublemakers, no matter the location. And as her driver, it was my job to protect her from such threats. From now on, I resolved to be more vigilant, not just with my driving, but with the people around us as well. After safely dropping Miss Harrington off at her destination, I stopped by a nearby gas station to refuel. Today's meeting was more a preliminary discussion, and I had been told that reviewing the business progress documents wouldn't take more than an hour. To ensure flexibility in case of schedule changes, I remained close by, ready to return to the meeting location when needed. However, as I approached the company's entrance, I was once again met with an unsettling sight. The same Mafia thugs from the convenience store were lingering outside the company building. I quickly parked the car and made my way toward the entrance. Justin and his men had already noticed my presence, standing with their arms crossed, glaring in my direction. "Well, I never expected to see you again so soon. Were you following us?" I had kept an eye on the rear view and side mirrors, but I hadn't noticed them tailing us. Some of them were even sitting on bicycles, which made me assume they were traveling by bike or on foot. But now, I suspected they might have just taken someone else's bicycles. Justin smirked ominously and replied, "Come on, you can't blame a guy for being curious. Seeing a fancy car like that, I just had to know where it was headed. And what do you know? It turns out you're making deals with a company big enough that even we've heard of it. I don't know much about your business, but if you're working with a place like this, you must be rolling in cash." With that, Justin stepped closer, pulling a wallet from his pocket. "Listen, I'm a little short on cash right now. How about a little donation? It'd be in your best interest, you know, unless you'd rather find out what happens when people don't cooperate. It seemed that Justin was trying to extort money from me, but there was no way I was going to give even a single cent to these scumbags. Even though I felt that way, this was still the premises of a business partner's company. If I caused trouble here, it would undoubtedly leave a bad impression on Miss Harrington. Worse yet, the company might decide not to do business with us if they saw us as the type to employ troublemakers. If I wanted to handle this smoothly, the best course of action would be to call the police, just as Miss Harrington had done earlier. I reached into my chest pocket to pull out my phone, but quickly realized I had made a mistake. I always kept my phone in my jacket's chest pocket when I went outside, but in my haste to get out of the car, I had left it behind. Noticing my reaction, Justin smirked. "Did you forget your phone in the car? Looks like our righteous hero, who saves the weak, won't even be able to call the police." With that, Justin and his group took another step closer, surrounding me. I let out a deep breath and asked them, "Excuse me, but do you have jobs?" Doing things like this will only lead to serious trouble later on. When I asked about their professions, Justin and his group exchanged glances and burst out laughing. "Jobs. Let me educate you. This is our job. We take money from people who look like they have it and use it to fund our drinking, eating, and setting up our own organization." Justin continued rambling about himself and his group. Apparently, their previous organization had been dismantled, so now they were trying to start a new one. Recently, this area had been seeing an increase in trouble, and Justin openly admitted that they were the ones extorting people for money. For someone to spill this much information so easily, they must have been low-ranking members in their former group with no sense of risk management. From our conversation so far, the only thing I had confirmed was that reasoning with them was pointless. I decided to suggest a change of location to avoid escalating the situation here. "How about we go somewhere else where we can talk more calmly? If someone sees us and calls the police, it wouldn't be good for you either, right? It's not a bad deal for you." Justin hesitated for a moment, but then slowly shook his head. "You're just trying to find a chance to run, aren't you? I'm not falling for that." They had the advantage in numbers, surrounding me from all sides. And yet, was there actually a chance they might let me escape in this situation? If that were the case, their skills must have been embarrassingly low. I sighed in exasperation at Justin and his group while quickly thinking of my next move. In the end, the situation remained unresolved, and before long, Miss Harrington returned. "You guys, what are you doing here?" Seeing Miss Harrington, Justin smirked and asked, "And who might you be?" "If you tell me, I'll back off for today." Miss Harrington had her phone pressed against her ear, likely about to call me. Justin must have noticed her phone and realized that she could call the police at any moment. Not wanting to take that risk, he decided to propose a retreat. Miss Harrington pulled out her business card and handed it to Justin, saying, "You'll just keep following us to our company anyway, won't you? Then let me save you the trouble. I run an 8 company. Does that satisfy you?" Justin took the business card and stared at it intently. After a moment, he seemed satisfied and said to both of us, "I'll let you off the hook for today. But if we cross paths again, you'd better be ready." With those parting words, Justin walked away, still eyeing Miss Harrington's business card. For the next few weeks, Justin and his group didn't show up at our company, and I started to relax. But just when I thought the danger had passed, they suddenly reappeared before us. It happened one evening after work when I was driving Miss Harrington home. Lately, work had been busy, and she'd have been staying late. To show her appreciation, she'd had made a reservation at a high-end restaurant. After parking in a downtown pay parking lot, we were heading toward the restaurant when Justin and his group stepped out of a car that had parked behind us. Noticing them, Miss Harrington whispered to me, "Hey, isn't that?" "Yes, they're not the type to listen to reason, so let's just ignore them." The odds of running into them here by chance were low. It was more likely they had followed us, but they were using a different car this time, so we hadn't noticed. As Justin and his group approached us, they acted surprised, as if this was just a coincidence. "I never expected to run into you here. How's business going?" His pathetic attempt at acting irritated me even more. But not wanting to get involved, Miss Harrington and I ignored him and kept walking. Apparently, Justin didn't like being ignored. His face turned red, and he ran ahead to block our path. "Hey, don't ignore me. Looks like you need a little lesson in respect." His pride had clearly taken a serious hit. He grabbed my arm with a rough grip, his voice louder and more aggressive than before. Now that he had physically grabbed me, ignoring him was no longer an option. With no choice, I stopped walking. Justin leaned in menacingly and said, "I did a little research on your company. Seems like you're making a lot of money. You know what I'm getting at, don't you? We used to be part of one of the biggest organizations in this area." Regaining his composure, Justin flashed his usual smug, ugly grin. Then he started bragging about the Mafia group he had once been a part of. The name of the organization rang a bell. I had heard of it somewhere before, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't recall where. As I searched my memories, Justin seemed to mistake my silence for fear. His arrogance grew, and he added, "Bring me $10 million and disappear. Or do you want a first-hand experience of how terrifying the underworld can be?" At his words, his lackeys closed in, surrounding Miss Harrington and me. This must have been their usual tactic, ganging up on people and extorting money. I could feel Miss Harrington trembling beside me. Not only were they pathetic for making money this way, but they were also cowards for terrifying a woman. These guys needed to be put in their place and sent somewhere they could be properly rehabilitated. Justin must have realized I wasn't going to comply. Rolling his shoulders, he muttered to his group, "Let's take him down all at once." As they closed in, I cracked my neck and stepped forward. It didn't take long. They probably thought they were tough, but their fighting skills were no better than schoolyard bullies. I dodged their wide, clumsy punches and struck their vital points, mainly their solar plexuses. One by one, 4 of them went down, leaving only Justin standing. "Hey, what the hell are you guys doing? Get up and fight." Despite his tough words, his knees were shaking. As I stepped toward him, he instinctively backed away. I cracked my knuckles and said, "You were talking big about teaching me a lesson. How about showing me what you've got?" Justin was completely terrified. He turned to run, but, in his panic, tripped over his own feet and fell hard. Scrambling to stand, he suddenly yelled at the top of his lungs, "Samuel. It's you, right? Help me. Some bastard is messing up our turf." Hearing that name, I instinctively widened my eyes. Samuel looked at me, recognition flashing across his face. Then, with a familiar warmth in his voice, he called my name. "Henry, it's been a long time. I was wondering what all the commotion was about. Wait, has this guy been bothering you?" "It's been quite a mess, yeah. But more importantly, Samuel, how have you been?" As Samuel and I exchanged a friendly embrace, Justin gaped in disbelief. "What the hell is going on? Samuel, you know this old man." Samuel shot him a sharp look, his presence instantly silencing him. "Henry is my mentor. You don't get to act like a big shot in front of him." As Justin and the others stared in confusion, Samuel began to explain how we knew each other. Before working as Miss Harrington's driver, I had been a rehabilitation officer in prison. That was where I met Samuel. Back then, he had been a high-ranking Mafia member who had been sentenced to prison. He had been so unruly that other staff members struggled to handle him. But I had taken it upon myself to teach him discipline, etiquette, and how to function in society. Most of the time, I had been strict with him, but there were moments when I listened to his concerns and helped him work through his anxieties about life after prison. Over time, We developed a strong bond of trust. Eventually, he completed his sentence and successfully reintegrated into society. For a while after his release, Samuel had kept in touch with me, but after I left my job at the prison, we lost contact. When I first left my job, I had completely lost confidence in myself and didn't feel like keeping in touch with anyone. The real reason I quit was because of an injury to my elbow. As a rehabilitation officer, I had always been strict but compassionate toward inmates. However, sometimes my intentions weren't understood, and I ended up making enemies. One such inmate who resented me attacked me from behind, injuring my elbow. It didn't affect my daily life much, but the fact that I had let my guard down, and more importantly, failed to build trust with that inmate, left a scar on my heart. Feeling unfit to continue in that line of work, I decided to quit. By chance, I was introduced to the job of being Miss Harrington's driver, which led me to where I am today. I had thought Justin's mention of his organization sounded familiar, but seeing Samuel triggered my memory. It was the same organization Samuel had once been a senior member of. In other words, Justin and his group were once under Samuel's leadership. That organization had since been dismantled, but Justin was now trying to build a new one. When I pointed this out, Samuel's expression hardened, and he spoke in a stern voice. "You're still chasing after that kind of life. It's time to get out of this world. Everyone leaves this life eventually, but when you look back in your final moments, make sure you've lived in a way you can be proud of. Otherwise, what was the point of being born?" Samuel's words seemed to strike a chord with Justin, but at the same time, I could see his inner turmoil. He had come this far. Turning back now wouldn't be easy. But no, we're going to make this work this time. We won't get caught by the cops. Samuel, you should join us and start over together. It seems Samuel's message didn't fully get through to them, but if they refused to listen, there was nothing more we could do. I looked at Justin and spoke in a calm tone. In that case, you'll just have to enter a facility and go through rehabilitation. Don't worry. People can change. Just like Samuel, you too can return to society as a respectable person. The Mafia members who had been writhing in pain slowly got back on their feet, gathering around Justin. They had heard everything and were now waiting to see how he would respond. Justin turned to them and ordered, "All of you, go at him again. Take him down this time." Still not giving up, huh? I let out a sigh and exchanged a glance with Samuel. This counts as self-defense, right? We have to protect Henry, after all. With Samuel now on my side, the fight ended in mere minutes. The two of us quickly took down the Mafia members again and then closed in on Justin. Behind him, the flashing red lights of police sirens approached. Miss Harrington muttered, "Finally, they're here." It seemed she had called the police. Damn it. I'm not getting arrested here. You guys, don't say a word to the cops. As Justin tried to escape, I grabbed him and locked his joints in place. Tears welled up in his eyes as he asked me, "Am I going to prison?" "Who knows? You'll be sent to a detention center first, and depending on the investigation, you might end up in prison. It's a great place for people like you." As we spoke, the officers got out of their patrol cars and rushed toward us. After explaining the situation and handing Justin and his group over, we parted ways with Samuel after a brief chat. It was already quite late, but Miss Harrington and I resumed our walk to the restaurant. "I had no idea you had such a background. I've always thought you were reliable, but now I understand. It's because you've overcome so much in your life." As she spoke, her hand brushed lightly against my fingertips. That night, we enjoyed a wonderful meal together. Later, I received a call from a police officer thanking me. Apparently, Justin's crimes were surfacing one after another. He had confessed to embezzlement, fraud, and extortion, meaning he would likely receive a significant prison sentence. For now, he was in a detention center, but even there, he was already complaining and showing signs of weakness. Given the situation, it was almost certain that he would be sent to prison once his charges were confirmed. There, he would face strict guidance, but prison staff genuinely wanted inmates to change for the better. Hopefully, he would come to terms with his crimes and work toward rehabilitation. As for me, I continued working as Miss Harrington's driver. But one thing had changed. After that night, we started dating, and eventually, we got married. Today, we'd invited Samuel to our home to help with our marriage registration. It's an honor to be your witness. Henry, are you sure you want someone like me for this? Samuel looked uncharacteristically bashful, but Miss Harrington and I both nodded firmly. From now on, I wouldn't just be her driver. I would be the man who supports her in both work and life. I wanted to be there for her more than ever, to stand by her side as she devoted herself to her career. As I thought about that, I watched Samuel's pen glide across the paper, signing as a witness to our marriage. The voice on her phone caused stress to rise across the office. Do you not value your long-term clients? Like a razor, the voice sliced through the quiet. She hung up and turned to face me in silence for a bit before letting out a long sigh and giving me a worried expression. Mason, what do we do at times like this? There was a tone of complete helplessness in her voice. I became increasingly aware that I needed to help her more aggressively. Mason is my name, and I am 39 years old. I work on an 8-companies maintenance team, where my major responsibility is to manage business systems that were created internally. Fixing system bugs, enhancing performance, and responding to sporadic user requests for new features are all part of the job description. Each team member supports the others while devoting themselves to particular tasks. Answering questions and performing daily system checks are my main responsibilities. I frequently deal with database problems and data update errors, identifying each issue and resolving it. I examine error data and verify system functionality. Although we rarely receive recognition for our work, we make sure everything goes without a hitch by working in the background. This is our maintenance team's pride and the real worth of our labor. It seems like the greatest pleasure when a client says, "We chose this system because the support is so reliable." Seldom. I never gave any thought to my reputation on the team. I was not a loud or conspicuous person. I merged into the background, if anything. However, one day while I was going about my regular business, something started to change a little. Meeting a new person served as the impetus for this transformation. Because of her, I began to alter even though I never felt the need to stand out. It took place on the day that the maintenance team leader's transfer was made public. Emma was the one who came to take his place. Emma was 34, according to her former coworkers. She was chosen as the new maintenance team leader because of her great willingness to contribute to the long-term stability and efficiency of systems, and because she had previously excelled in the development department. On her first day, Emma immediately changed the vibe of the team with her upbeat disposition and fair, friendly manner. Her cheerful personality appeared to shine through her desk. She had the self-assurance of a leader, was well-groomed in a sharp suit, and had distinctive features. She exuded an accessible charm with her soft expression. Every time she talked, her voice had a pleasing way of echoing in my ears, and her seat was near mine. I was anxious about Emma's words when she first approached my desk, but she was only introducing herself. "Hi, Mason. The former leader told me you're dependable and experienced. I'm excited to work with you, even if I may need to rely on you occasionally." Her comments calmed me down. If there's anything I can do, I'm happy to help. I look forward to working with you too. I exhaled a sigh of relief after answering her upbeat greeting and hopeful glance. A simple smile relieved the anxiety I had been experiencing, so of course I grinned back. Her upbeat demeanor inspired me to approach my task with a fresh perspective. During daily operations, Emma treated everyone equally. When someone had new ideas or suggestions, she would actively encourage team discussions. She even took an interest in the work I quietly tackled. "Mason, how's the progress on the issue?" She'd often ask casually. "They want me to respond today, but it's a bit tricky and might take time. However, we've seen similar issues before, so I'm checking old records for a solution." She always encouraged me. "That sounds tough, but I'm sure you'll figure it out, Mason. Oh, and if you ever hit a wall, don't hesitate to let me know. I can check with the development team for you." Her consideration and kindness gradually started changing me. The previous leader was by no means a bad leader. He was systematic and thoroughly maintained organized management. Under his leadership, work always proceeded according to plan, and there were very few mishaps within the maintenance team. He had extensive technical knowledge and earned the respect of everyone on the team. However, his leadership came with a certain strictness, and at times, the team's atmosphere was tense and a little strained. In contrast, Emma's leadership style was flexible and open. She valued each member's opinion and made an effort to create an environment where ideas could be freely expressed. Thanks to her, the team's atmosphere became more relaxed and creative. Even I began to talk more actively with other team members. The internal work life, which often felt isolating, gradually started to feel brighter. Thanks to her, her presence had colored my world in ways I hadn't imagined. Each day at the office became something I looked forward to more than before. To my surprise, I found myself enjoying our conversations so much that I started sharing my worries and concerns about work with her. Emma's warm personality and dedicated attitude toward the team slowly began to unravel the tension I carried. One day, Emma approached my desk with a slightly anxious expression. "Mason, there's a bit of a problem. You know that request from the client you handled recently? I went to consult the development team because it's tough for our team to address," she said. Her voice unusually carried a hint of agitation. She was referring to a request I'd received from a client about modifying the report generation feature of their business system. But this wasn't an ordinary issue. The problematic feature had been developed using Procobol, a programming language now considered ancient. No one on our team knew how to handle it, and even the development team had no experience with it. The last person who worked with the language had left the company 4 years ago. Looking at me apologetically, Emma explained our team doesn't have the skills to handle this, and the development team can't step in either. I plan to give the client some kind of answer, but I can't think of a good one right now. Her expression showed just how troubled she was. Seeing her like that, I also wanted to do something, but there seemed to be no way out. Emma had no choice but to inform the client that the issue couldn't be fixed. As I watched her make the call, I could practically hear the client's anger spilling over to our side. The frustration practically echoed throughout the office. "Don't you care about your longtime clients?" The voice on the other end cut through the tense silence. She tried her best to respond sincerely, but the voice on the other end only grew angrier. When she finally hung up, she turned to me, silent for a moment. Then, with a deep sigh and a worried look, she said softly, "Mason, what are we supposed to do in situations like this?" There was a hint of despair in her voice. The anxiety in her eyes weighed heavily on my heart as well. That incident made us painfully aware that we still had so much to learn. Technology advances day by day, but sometimes even old technologies need to be revived. That day, we didn't just feel our limitations as engineers, but we were forced to think seriously about how we could grow as a team. Looking into her eyes, I said firmly, "It might be tough, but let's try to find a solution together. At the very least, we should talk to Alex. We don't usually consult him about maintenance issues, but special situations require special measures." Emma looked a bit surprised at my suggestion, but nodded in agreement. "You're right. I'll contact Alex." Her expression seemed to brighten slightly, as if she'd found a glimmer of hope. She headed off to Alex, the department manager, to explain the problem and its impact, asking for his support. However, when Emma returned from Alex's office, her usual brightness was gone, and the disappointment on her face hinted at an unfavorable outcome. She slowly made her way back to her desk, looked me in the eye, and let out a deep sigh. Then, she quietly began to tell me about her conversation with Alex. Mason, I told Alex everything about the issue, but he was pretty firm about it. He said, "Emma, this is a critical matter. They're one of our key clients, and many users have been relying on our business system for years. We can't leave this problem unresolved, so find a solution however you can." He emphasized it with a serious look. Her voice trembled slightly under the weight of the pressure. Hearing this, I searched for words to comfort her. It was hard to see her so dejected. At the same time, I felt a confusing surge of emotions toward her. Why does seeing her so down make me feel this way? Why do I feel so compelled to support her? Could it be that I like her? The question swirled endlessly in my mind. This was the first time I had ever felt such emotions, I thought. Emma, please don't carry this burden alone. We're here too, and we'll solve this problem together. If there's anything we can do, just say the word. The whole team will support you. The other maintenance team members nearby chimed in as well. Emma, we'll help however we can, they said with conviction. She managed a small smile, looking as though she had regained a bit of strength. From that moment, Emma wasted no time. She knocked on the development team's doors repeatedly. The development team had several leaders, but each one gave her the same response when she asked for help. Nobody uses such an old language anymore. I'm too busy right now, sorry. It's impossible. Consistently, they turned her down. With each rejection, I could see Emma's expression grow heavier. Watching her efforts firsthand, I knew just how hard she was trying to resolve this issue. She wasn't the type to give up easily. Still, repeated closed doors can break anyone's spirit. Seeing her like that, I knew I had to do something more to support her. I, too, had faced plenty of rejection in the past. Her frustration reminded me of my own struggles years ago, and it hurt to see her in that state. I wanted to help her somehow. As I searched for answers, I recalled my past. During the recession caused by the Lehman shock, I became a job seeker, facing challenges to survive that tough time. I taught myself multiple programming languages. Among those were the basics of SQL and COBOL, which turned out to be related to this issue. While I had never worked with COBOL directly, I thought that maybe this knowledge could help Emma, the team, and the client. I immediately started digging through COBOL manuals and online resources. After work hours, I stayed late into the night studying COBOL syntax and characteristics. I spent my weekends almost entirely at the office, exploring ways to combine SQL and COBOL to fix the problem. Even as Emma and the others left for the day, I remained battling the screen alone. During this time, Emma reached out to branch engineers and external vendors, but budget constraints meant all her attempts were turned down. Even as she ran around searching for solutions, she still found moments to check in on me. Mason, you've been staying late these past few days. Are you handling a bug fix? I turned away from the screen and looked at her. Not exactly. I've been researching that COBOL issue, trying to see if there's anything we can do. She looked surprised. What? Mason, didn't you say you didn't have experience with COBOL? I smiled slightly and explained to clear up her misunderstanding. No, I don't, but it's built on a combination of SQL and COBOL. I still use SQL, and I studied COBOL a long time ago. I'm just trying to piece it together. Hearing this, the other maintenance members also stepped up to offer their help. Mason, don't keep this to yourself. I can help with the SQL part. I'll assist with testing, another one added. Emma's eyes glistened as she expressed her gratitude to all of us. Thank you so much, everyone. I've been struggling alone, but I can't believe how much support you're giving me. Mason, you and the whole team have given me hope. At that moment, I felt a powerful sense of unity as our team came together to tackle this challenge. That unity became our greatest strength. I took the lead in assigning tasks to the team. Despite our usual workloads, we divided the roles strategically, using whatever limited time we had. We paused when needed, repeating corrections and checks as we pushed forward. Each of us played to our strengths, working together with all our might to solve the issue. Even in the midst of our business, collaborating as a team gave us a sense of steady progress. With every obstacle, our bond grew stronger, and our mutual support solidified. It was a great opportunity for me to grow in the process of working together as a team toward a common goal. While each person did his or her job well, those days continued for 2 weeks. After countless rounds of trial and error, we finally discovered a solution to fix the program. We ran numerous simulations and conducted thorough tests, down to the smallest detail. Then, the relief we felt when we confirmed the repaired system worked correctly was beyond words. After completing the fix, we immediately reported it to Emma. "Emma, we did it. We fixed the report functionality just as the client requested, all on our own." When she heard the news, her face instantly lit up. After reviewing the fix, she turned to me with a look of genuine gratitude. "Thank you so much, Mason. Because of you and everyone here, I think the client will be thrilled," she said, her smile beaming with happiness. Seeing her radiant smile, I felt both relief and an indescribable sense of accomplishment. When we reported the fix to the client, they were extremely satisfied. Hearing their response, Emma and I exchanged small victory high fives in the office. It felt like all the struggles we had faced had suddenly lifted, leaving us with a sense of triumph. This experience not only made me realize the growth I had achieved, both personally and as part of the team, but it also strengthened the bond between Emma and me. One afternoon, I was suddenly summoned by Alex. When I entered the room, Alex was sitting at his desk, looking deep in thought. As I walked in, he lifted his head and looked at me. "Mason, the report fixed the other day was a huge help. Thank you. With that in mind, I want to assign you as the leader of our next big project." At first, I couldn't process what Alex was saying. I was so surprised that I couldn't speak for a moment. But when I saw the serious look in his eyes, I realized this was no light conversation. "Wait, a new project, and you want me as the leader? Are you sure I'm the right person for this?" Alex smiled apologetically and began explaining. "Ah, my bad. I should have explained the project first. The next big project involves transitioning the old Procobol system to a more modern program and language that today's developers can work with. You've shown that you can handle Procobol, and you're familiar with modern programming languages as well. By switching to a new system, we'll be able to resolve future issues or requests more efficiently. Emma told me that the report fix was only possible because of you. I'm confident that you're the right person to lead this project to success." Hearing his words, I was speechless for a moment. I never expected to be entrusted with such an important role. "Thank you, but I'm not sure if I'm confident enough for it. Can I have a little time to think?" I replied hesitantly. Alex seemed slightly surprised, but quickly softened his expression. "I understand. Just consider it carefully." I nodded lightly and left his office. Walking down the hallway, my heart felt conflicted. In my experience, my hard work hadn't always paid off. During the time, I became a job seeker, facing challenges after the Lehman shock. No matter how hard I worked, my efforts were rarely recognized. Those memories came flooding back, as vivid as ever. Not long after, Emma came over to my desk, eager to talk about what she'd heard from Alex. She seemed genuinely happy about the idea of me becoming the new project leader. "Mason, this is such a great opportunity. You're leading a project. That's going to be amazing, and we'll all be here to support you." Her words were always full of positivity, but I felt I needed to be honest with her. "Emma, to be honest, I'm not sure about this. I'm thinking of turning it down." Her eyes widened in shock before she quickly responded with conviction. "What? You absolutely have to take this. What's holding you back?" I took a deep breath and opened up about my feelings. There are two things that worry me. First, from my past experience, my hard work hasn't always paid off. During the Lehman shock, when I started job hunting, most companies froze hiring. As a liberal arts graduate, I had no standout skills, and for 6 months, I didn't get a single offer. I tried to change my situation, so I threw myself into learning programming languages on the advice of a friend. I ended up teaching myself over 10 languages, but even then, every interview ended the same way. You don't have real work experience. It took over a year before I finally landed a job, and that was only because of a connection. That's when I realized that sometimes effort isn't enough. So now I'm scared that even if I try hard, it might all be for nothing. Emma patiently listened to me, and when I finished, she spoke softly but firmly. But Mason, this time is different. I saw how alive you were when you tackled that issue, how much you shined. Watching you inspired me too. Her words struck a chord within me. I realized that little by little, my recent work had been helping me heal from those past scars. Back when I first started learning programming, I held on to the hope that it might open doors for me, and I also genuinely enjoyed it. That's why I kept learning language after language. Even when Alex brought up the report fix project, a part of me imagined how smoothly it could be done with the right programming tools. Emma's optimism and gentle smile planted a new seed of hope within me. There was no point in being tied down by my bitter past. It was time to move forward again, to have the courage to take another step. Then Emma asked, with a soft smile, "Can I hear the second reason?" Feeling a little embarrassed, I muttered quietly, "Well, I just thought it'd be nice to keep working with you." Hearing that, she looked a little surprised, but her expression quickly softened into a bright smile. "That's even more reason for you to take on the role, Mason. I know you'll turn this project into something incredible. I'm looking forward to seeing you lead the team and support us as the amazing leader I know you can be," she said, encouraging me. Her words gave me the push I needed to solidify my resolve. I decided to take the challenge, to work alongside her, supporting one another and growing together. With that vision in mind, I committed to moving forward. For the next 6 months, I threw myself into the report generation feature modification project. When I first accepted the role of project leader, I felt like a heavy weight had been placed on my shoulders. But thanks to Emma and the support of my team members, my initial anxiety gradually transformed into confidence. We decided to migrate the report generation program from Procobol to Python. After careful comparison, Python was chosen based on the development team's familiarity and ease of future maintenance. Every day was spent working late into the night, and weekends were often spent cooped up in the office. But every step we took brought us closer to success. We meticulously combed through the existing code line by line, rebuilding it in the new programming language. My proficiency in multiple programming languages turned out to be a tremendous asset in this project. As the project progressed, collaboration with the development team grew stronger and more seamless. The development team members began to highly value my programming knowledge, and I also received a lot of advice and support from them. The development team's leader, Matthew, approached me one day and said, "Mason, your work on this project has been a huge help. Not just the technical solutions, but also the thoughtful documentation and design for long-term maintenance. I've learned so much from you." Hearing those words, I felt like all the long hours of effort had finally paid off. The programming languages I had struggled to learn during my jobless days were now proving to be invaluable. I realized that all the hardships back then had not been in vain. This experience became a powerful testament to overcoming that difficult time, filling me with confidence for my future career. Seeing my skills recognized and witnessing them create tangible value made me truly believe that the path I had chosen was the right one. After 6 months of hard work, the project was finally complete. The new report generation system began running smoothly. When we informed the client that future modifications would now be much easier, they gave us high praise. Following this success, Alex officially entrusted me with a leadership position on the development team. Mason, under your leadership, this team has achieved great results. I'm counting on you to take us even further, he said. Hearing those words filled me with both pride and a sense of responsibility. Through this project, I had overcome the fears and doubts that had been holding me back. It was thanks to Emma, my team, and the development team's support that I had been able to achieve this. As a leader now, I wanted to take on even more projects, guiding the team to greater success. Seeing the entire team grow and improve together became my greatest joy. After the project's successful completion, I made a decision. I decided to invite Emma out to dinner to express my gratitude and to share something deeply important. I was finally ready to tell her how I felt about her. On a slightly chilly autumn evening, I invited Emma to a cozy local Italian restaurant. When she arrived, she wasn't in her usual suit, but dressed in a casual outfit. Seeing her like that was refreshing, and I found myself growing nervous. "Thank you for bringing me to such a lovely place, Mason," she said with a smile, which gradually eased my tension. As the evening went on, we talked about the project, our future work, and even personal hobbies. Her laughter and attentive listening made me appreciate her even more, revealing just how deep and kind-hearted she was. When dessert was almost over, my heart began to race. I took a deep breath and decided to speak my mind. "Emma, there's another reason I asked you to dinner tonight. Working on this project, I've gotten to know you so much better, and I'm truly grateful for that. And I've also realized that I've grown to care about you. I like you." It was difficult to get the words out, but I looked straight into her eyes as I spoke. She looked surprised at first, but then her face softened into a warm smile. "Mason, I feel the same way. I've always relied on you as a team member, but ever since the report fix, I've watched you grow and shine right by your side. I want to spend more time with you too." Hearing her words, my heart overflowed with relief and joy. That moment became one of the happiest in my life. From that day on, we started dating. With each moment we spent together, our bond deepened. Her smile had the power to lift my spirits, no matter how tired or stressed I was. With her support, I found the strength to face the daily pressures of work. Years later, we got married and built a small but happy family together. Having a partner who supported me both at work and in life brought new colors and meaning to my world. Meeting Emma and sharing every day with her is the greatest joy in my life. Back then, when I became a job seeker facing challenges due to the effects of the Lehman shock, I faced countless hardships. But the effort I put into learning programming languages ultimately led me to this happy future. That difficult period shaped who I am today and perhaps prepared me to meet Emma. Looking back now, I realize that those struggles became the foundation that brought us together so strongly. Meeting and the journey we've shared, growing side by side, is an irreplaceable treasure to me. I believe that together we can continue to support each other and overcome any challenges life throws our way.
Rachel stood quietly, like a wallflower at the party, looking intimidated in her gorgeous blue kimono. I took her hand gently after noticing her hesitation. My heart skipped a beat as I touched it because it felt delicate and smooth, like silk. I caused Rachel to pause before she gave me a small nod. "If you'd like my suggestion," I said. I went on, "My name is Ryan, and I'm 30 years old. I work for a small to medium-sized company that distributes booze wholesale. We mostly deal with sake, a kind of Japanese alcoholic beverage produced by nearby breweries. The first significant event I've organized and carried out since joining this organization in the middle of my career is tomorrow. There is a sizable sake tasting event. The event has been well publicized to both locals and tourists, making it accessible to all, even if the primary attendees are foreign buyers. Because it falls during a local festival, both locals and tourists from other countries attend. In preparation for such an occasion tomorrow, a reception party is being hosted today. Representatives from nearby breweries and invited overseas customers are crowded inside the hotel ballroom. In order to facilitate comfortable communication between the buyers and the brewery owners who speak only Japanese, we have made sure that translators are accessible for all of the foreign visitors. I looked around the room for any problems, feeling a little comforted by the welcoming environment. At that moment, I saw a stunning woman standing by herself in a kimono. It was Rachel, the Irwin Brewery president's daughter. She had a striking appearance. Her kimono's gradient, which changed from light blue at the neckline to deep blue at the sleeves, was embellished with wave-like floral motifs. The elegance of her attire was matched by her beauty. Her straight nose contrasted with her soft pink lips, and her almond-shaped, double-lidded eyes were accentuated with expertly applied shadow. As she moved, her black hair, which was carelessly tied up, swayed lightly. She stood there looking lonely and out of place, even though she looked beautiful. I rushed at her. "Is everything well, Rachel? Do you feel ill?" She slowly raised her head in response to my question. When we locked eyes, she whispered, "Oh, I'm sorry. The atmosphere is simply overwhelming me a bit." Rachel smiled somewhat, but it was strained, and she appeared exhausted. "You look so beautiful in that kimono, Rachel. Being a wallflower at this party is really unfortunate for someone who is so attractive." I attempted to seem upbeat, but her face remained expressionless. "Well, I tried my best because you and my father both urged me to. However, I'm inherently timid, so even when someone speaks to me, I find it difficult to react appropriately." Rachel hesitated, covering her mouth slightly as if unsure whether to continue. Finally, she frowned slightly and spoke. "Talking through an interpreter is just awkward." Since Rachel only speaks Japanese, she couldn't understand the foreign guests directly. Although the interpreter translated for her, she often hesitated over how to respond, leading to awkward pauses. During the interpreter's translation of her reply, the silence felt unnatural to her. They talk a lot in English, but when it's translated into Japanese, it's so short. It makes me wonder if the interpreter is leaving something out. I started to get suspicious. "I'm sorry. I know it's just my imagination overthinking it." All that had left her exhausted, making her retreat into the background. "I'm sorry. This event is the result of all your hard work, and I can't even handle it properly." As she slumped in dejection, I smiled and extended my hand. Rachel tilted her head slightly in confusion. "In that case, why don't we go around together? I know a lot of people here, and I was planning to greet them anyway. Maybe having me with you will make it a bit easier." Rachel hesitated at my invitation. "But won't I just be in the way?" I firmly took her hand before she could refuse. Her soft touch made my heart race slightly. "Not at all. It would be an honor to accompany you." I flashed a bright smile and gently but confidently led her forward. Rachel silently followed me. Our first stop was to meet my French friend, Claude. "Claude, it's been a while. Thanks for coming," I greeted him. Rachel visibly froze, her mouth agape in shock. She was surprised because I had spoken in French. Claude, unfazed by Rachel's reaction, gave me a big hug. He then turned to hug Rachel, but I quickly stopped him. "No, Claude. Japanese women aren't used to physical contact like that," I said firmly. Claude chuckled and replied in flawless Japanese. "Not hugging such a beautiful woman would be rude, don't you think?" "You're doing that on purpose," I smiled awkwardly, translating the exchange for Rachel. I added that Claude was actually fluent in Japanese. Relieved, Rachel gave a small smile. "Your best friend's a Frenchman? I didn't know you could speak French." Scratching my head awkwardly, I replied, "Well, there was never really a reason to mention it." I then turned to Claude with a serious expression. "Claude, this is Rachel, the next president of Irwin Brewery, the company that once produced the legendary sake, Silver Summit." Claude's eyes widened, and Rachel looked equally surprised. "What does Claude know about Silver Summit? It's been over 30 years since it was discontinued," she said. Before I could respond, Claude suddenly embraced Rachel. "Hey, stop it." Claude let her go. I tried to pull him off, but his strength was impressive. Claude ignored me, holding Rachel tightly as he gushed. "I can't believe it. someone connected to the creators of that legendary sake. Finally, I managed to peel him off, and Rachel was very red-faced. Seeing her confusion, I decided to share a bit of my history with Claude. I explained that due to my parents' work, I had moved around Europe as a child until I was in the first year of middle school. At first, I had a hard time understanding the language at all, especially when I was 10 and living in France. I struggled to learn French and felt lonely because I couldn't make friends. It was Claude who reached out to me during that time. He invited me to play ball games that didn't require much conversation, taught me French, and even learned Japanese from me in return. Thanks to him, I eventually made more friends and grew comfortable with the language. Today, French is one of the languages I'm most confident in. I owe Claude more than I can ever repay, and as it turns out, Claude owes me as well. By pure coincidence, I had once helped his grandfather when I found him collapsed on the street. Although my French was still poor back then, I frantically called out to nearby adults for help, making a big scene. Luckily, thanks to the quick response, Claude's grandfather recovered without any lasting effects. From then on, Claude's family treated me and my parents with exceptional kindness. Then, 3 years ago, Claude suddenly came to Japan to visit me. He had come to tell me that his grandfather had passed away. Hearing that the funeral had been a small family-only affair, I couldn't hold back my tears. Claude's grandfather had always been so kind. Every time I saw him, he would walk up, smile, and hand me a piece of candy. Even when I grew older and insisted, "I'm not a kid anymore," he would still press the candy into my hand with the same cheerful smile. Knowing I'd never see that smile again was heartbreaking. At that moment, Claude handed me a bottle of sake. My grandfather bought this 30 years ago and treasured it. He wanted me to share it with you. Claude's grandfather had a passion for collecting alcohol from all over the world. Though he enjoyed drinking, he would carefully store rare and valuable bottles as part of his collection. He even had a custom storage facility to preserve each bottle's quality. Sake is known for its ability to age well, provided it's properly distilled and stored under optimal conditions. With careful barrel aging in temperature-controlled environments, well-aged sake can develop rich and complex flavors over time, often earning a place on the menus of prestigious restaurants. I once had the privilege of sharing a bottle of treasured wine from his grandfather's collection during a meal with Claude's family. That red wine was rich and well-aged, but for someone used to cheaper drinks like me, it was a bit hard to appreciate. When I couldn't help but make a sour face, Claude's grandfather laughed and said, "You've still got a child's palate." Peeling away the paper wrapper designed to block light, the label Silver Summit appeared. I admired the simple calligraphy on the label as I carefully opened the bottle. The moment the cork was opened, the sweet aroma of sake wafted through the air, tickling my nose with a gentle glug 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 sound. The thick liquid poured smoothly into the tiny cup, aged to perfection. It was no longer clear but a rich amber color. We raised our glasses together, honoring Claude's grandfather, and brought them to our lips. The moment I took a sip, a jolt shot through my mind. The taste was incredibly smooth, with a gentle sweetness melting on my tongue, followed by a complex wave of acidity and a faint bitterness that filled my mouth, leaving a lingering sense of happiness even as it slid down my throat. Unlike fresh, young sake, it didn't have a crisp lightness. I wondered what Silver Summit had tasted like when it was newly brewed. I froze in astonishment and glanced at Claude, who had his eyes closed, savoring the drink. A single tear glistened on his cheek. I wish I could have shared this with my grandfather. I nodded slowly, understanding the sentiment. When I finished recounting the story, Rachel's eyes widened in surprise. "To think our Silver Summit," she started, so happy she could barely continue. She lowered her gaze, "But I'm sorry, there are no plans to restart production." At her words, Claude's face fell visibly, filled with disappointment. Silver Summit was developed and crafted as a legacy project by Rachel's grandfather before his retirement, with the goal of creating a flagship sake for Earn Distillery. He collaborated closely with trusted rice farmers to source large quantities of high-quality rice, dedicating over 200 hours to meticulously milling and preparing the raw ingredients. While over-refining doesn't always guarantee a better sake, The precisely polished rice yielded a sophisticated flavor. In the world of sake, spirits aged to perfection in carefully selected barrels, with attention to every detail of the production process, achieving the status of premium, small batch, or single barrel sake. At this stage, the sake is already considered high-end. However, Silver Summit was meticulously polished over 200 hours, achieving an astonishing polishing ratio of 20%. Born from countless trials and errors, Silver Summit was undoubtedly a masterpiece. But the high cost of ingredients and the labor-intensive production process made it very expensive. During the economic boom, it was a massive hit in its first year. Unfortunately, the collapse of the economic boom brought a sudden downturn, and spending on luxury items like sake became a low priority. Silver Summit had to cease production after only a few years. Since then, Earn Distillery has focused on producing affordable yet delicious sake, maintaining a modest operation to this day. However, they no longer have the resources to reintroduce a high-end sake. Seeing both Rachel and Claude's disappointed expressions, I puffed out my chest. That's why I organized this event. They both looked at me, eyes wide with curiosity. The local sake, I'm confident it can stand up to anything anywhere. Not just here or across Japan, but internationally as well. If we market it to people overseas, it's bound to become a hit. And if sales increase, reviving Silver Summit won't just be a dream. As I passionately explained, Claude's eyes lit up, and Rachel looked stunned. You thought about this much? I nodded firmly. I refuse to live in a world where I can't drink that sake again. When I grinned, Rachel smiled warmly and clearly moved. Claude and I promised to meet again at tomorrow's tasting event, and I led Rachel to greet other acquaintances. Every representative from the breweries was in high spirits, and the only one who needed my support was Rachel. With every introduction, Rachel seemed both flustered and impressed, her eyes darting back and forth. When the reception party wrapped up and I stepped outside after helping with cleanup, I saw Rachel in her kimono, arms crossed, waiting for me. Good work? What's going on? I asked, confused, and she puffed out her cheeks. What's going on? That's what I want to ask you. What are you, Ryan? It's not just French you speak. English, Italian, German, and some other languages I can't even remember. How are you fluent in so many languages? With a flurry of hand gestures and a flustered expression, she bombarded me with questions, looking surprisingly adorable. I tried my best to keep my amusement from showing on my face. I told you, didn't I? When I was a kid living in Europe, I had no choice but to learn the local languages. Japanese, English, French, Italian, German, Spanish, and finally, during my time in Switzerland, I even picked up Romansh, a language spoken by very few. Driven by my growing interest in languages, Rachel was still visibly excited. And Oxford University? Really? You went to such a prestigious school, and then you joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Why are you now working for a small liquor wholesaler? She had been quietly listening, her eyes wide, while I chatted with old friends during the party. Although she seemed impressed, she hadn't asked about my background until now. She had happily talked about Earn Brewery, the nuances of steak tasting, and laughed freely at jokes between me and my old friends. But now all her pent-up curiosity about my past was spilling out. Are you really curious about someone like me? I asked, and Rachel nodded so quickly it was almost instant. Her reaction made me laugh again. All right, it's getting late, and we have an early morning tomorrow. But should we go to the hotel bar for a bit? When I suggested the bar on the top floor, Rachel nodded quietly, and the two of us stepped into the elevator to prepare for tomorrow. We ordered drinks with low alcohol content and raised a toast. Then I briefly shared my background with Rachel. My childhood in Europe, which I had grown so accustomed to, came to an abrupt end when I was 13. My parents' jobs brought us back to Japan. They were overjoyed to return to their homeland, but the thought of moving yet again weighed heavily on me. The last place I lived was Switzerland, but it was close to Germany and France, where I had lived before, so I could visit old friends during holidays. Moving to Japan meant leaving that familiar region far, far behind, and because the move was decided so suddenly, I couldn't even say proper goodbyes. Determined to return to Europe someday, I threw myself in my studies. My goal was to attend a European university. I initially thought about studying in Switzerland, where I had lived last, but my best friend Claude encouraged me to aim for Oxford University with him. Claude was exceptionally intelligent, and the way he so casually suggested Oxford surprised me. But his suggestion lit a fire within me. I wanted to attend the same school as him. I wanted to experience the world-class education of one of the best universities in the world. I studied relentlessly and eventually secured admission to Oxford. Of course, Claude was also accepted, and my time at Oxford became one of the most fulfilling periods of my life. I made many friends beyond Claude and landed a job at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which seemed like an ideal career. But after some time, doubts began to creep in. Was this really the right job for me? I couldn't shake the feeling that both my university choice and career had been decisions I made simply because they were recommended to me. While my time at university was undeniably one of the most valuable and fulfilling experiences of my life, choosing that path felt like the best decision I ever made. As for my career, I chose the Ministry of Foreign Affairs because I could speak 7 languages and wanted to work in a field that connects Japan with the rest of the world. However, in hindsight, it feels like I went along with what was recommended to me. Even though the work was meaningful and fulfilling on the surface, something felt off. That uneasiness lingered within me, smoldering quietly. Then Silver Summit shattered those doubts with a single sip. The moment I tasted it, I knew I wanted to work in a field that connects Japan with the rest of the world, but exactly how? I had struggled to answer that question for so long. When I tasted Silver Summit, the answer became clear. I wanted to share this sake with the world. So I left the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and joined my current liquor wholesaler. When I finished my story, Rachel's eyes were wide with astonishment. The turning point in your life was my grandfather's alcohol, she asked, stunned, and I nodded quietly. I felt like it was the only thing I could do. Actually, I even reached out to Rand Brewery to see if they would hire me, but they turned me down, saying they didn't need more staff. As I said this, I glanced at Rachel. She had been the one to respond so apologetically to my inquiry, but it seemed she didn't remember. However, wait, could it be about 3 years ago? That guy in a suit who showed up out of nowhere asking for a job even though we weren't hiring? To my surprise, she remembered. Well, yeah, of course I do. No one else ever showed up asking to be hired when there weren't even job postings. Her reply made me slump a little in embarrassment. Yeah, makes sense. And when I finally got hired at my current company and came to introduce myself to Rand Brewery, you didn't seem to recognize me at all, I said with a wry smile. Rachel's face turned red. Oh, I see. So that guy in the suit asking us to hire him was you, Ryan? Sorry, I didn't connect the dots. Well, considering I had barely been given a glance before being turned away, it wasn't surprising. Even though I was completely overlooked back then, I finally made it this far, I said, biting my lip. Although I managed to get involved in the sales of local sake, every proposal to expand our market internationally was consistently and flatly rejected. No matter how much I emphasized the growing global interest in Japanese sake, the stubborn current president, Mr. Mason, dismissed it outright, insisting only Japanese can truly appreciate the taste of Japanese sake. He refused to even hear me out. So I shifted my focus to the vice president, Mason's son. I pitched my ideas to him, shared my background, and highlighted the connections I had built during my time living in Europe, studying at Oxford University, and working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Finally, I managed to secure approval for tomorrow's large-scale tasting event. It's all for the revival of Silver Summit. Honestly, it's completely personal. Of course, I also hope this will help bring attention to and elevate all the incredible, high-quality sake from our local distilleries. At its core, though, my main goal is to contribute to the comeback of Silver Summit. With sufficient funding and given the current global Japanese sake boom and rising domestic demand for quality spirits, I'm convinced this won't be a losing battle. Rachel swirled her cocktail glass gently. I'm happy knowing someone with such passion has been supporting our brewery all this time. Her lips, slightly flushed from the alcohol, moved in a way that was almost mesmerizing. Watching her made my heart race. "Maybe that's why I was drawn to you," she murmured. Her words, abstract and fleeting, made my heart skip a beat. Rachel slowly looked at me, her gaze lingering for what felt like 5 full seconds. We stared at each other in silence. I broke it first. "For Silver Summit, and to be honest, for you, Rachel, I've always been doing this for you." Rachel's eyes widened in shock. "If tomorrow's event is a success, would you let me help bring Silver Summit back as your partner?" Her lips trembled slightly. "Do you mean?" I scratched my head awkwardly. "This is too roundabout, isn't it?" "Not very manly, Rachel. I like you. Will you go out with me?" I blurted out my feelings directly, heart pounding. To be honest, I only did so because I thought I had a chance. Rachel's earlier murmur about being drawn to someone had given me the push I needed, convincing me she was talking about me. However, I'm sorry, I make it a rule not to develop romantic feelings for business partners. My jaw dropped in shock. "What? But earlier you said you were drawn to me," I muttered pitifully. Rachel's face turned red. "That's because I meant you're someone who naturally draws people in. You've been such a great support, even making someone like me, who's terrible at parties, want to participate. It's that kind of attraction." In other words, it wasn't romantic at all. I'd been rejected in record time. I drained the rest of my drink in one gulp. I wanted to drown my sorrows in alcohol, but with tomorrow's event, I couldn't afford to get drunk. As I stared at my empty glass with a heavy heart, Rachel chuckled softly. "But maybe I'll start seeing you that way from now on." Her unexpected words made me snap my head up to look at her. Rachel shyly covered her face with her hands. "Don't stare at me like that. If I think about it too much, I might start feeling flustered inside." I did a triumphant fist pump, silently cheering. I wasn't ready to give up yet. A faint glimmer of hope flickered in the distance, keeping me moving forward. Then now, after more than 10 years, Rachel and I stood together in the brewery, surrounded by the staff, all holding their breath in anticipation. We poured the radiant liquid into our tiny cups, its brilliance catching the light, and exchanged a glance. When I gave her a silent nod, Rachel lifted the cup with both hands and brought it to her lips. She sipped, savored the taste, and swallowed slowly before her face melted into an expression of pure bliss. Seeing her reaction, I followed suit, bringing the cup to my lips. As the liquid flowed over my tongue, tears welled up and spilled over. The sake was incredibly smooth. A pleasant acidity greeted me first, followed by a rich, velvety sweetness that spread throughout my mouth, leaving a warm sense of happiness even as I swallowed. When Claude and I had tasted the aged Silver Summit years ago, the sweetness came first, followed by notes of acidity and bitterness. But this newly crafted Silver Summit introduced the acidity up front, evolving into a mellow sweetness that lingered. I had never tasted Silver Summit freshly brewed 30 years ago, but I was certain. This is Silver Summit. My heart trembled with emotion. "We need to invite Claude," I said through my tears. Rachel nodded with a radiant smile. The day after my heartfelt confession had ended in rejection, the tasting event was a resounding success. Thanks to meticulous planning and widespread promotion, the hotel venue was packed with locals and tourists alike. Every brewery booth saw a steady stream of visitors, but Irwin Brewery's booth was especially crowded. Recently, Irwin Distillery had focused on producing affordable and accessible Japanese sake. However, for this event, they prepared a special new batch. While they couldn't craft a premium small batch sake due to time constraints in sourcing the ideal grains, they used their current flagship 60% mash bill. By adjusting the flavor profile, they created a smoother, more approachable sake with a clean finish, prioritizing balance over sweetness. This approach earned high praise. Through interpreters, I expressed our ambition to create something even greater, something that could earn the title of a legend. Dairy Brew. Many international buyers offered their cooperation, large orders were secured, and Earn Brewery suddenly found itself bustling with activity. The one-sided tanks had to be reactivated, and with the ample funds now available, the brewery took its first steps toward reviving Silver Summit. I helped in every way I could. Around that time, I also managed to win Rachel's heart. When she embraced me and said, "I can't imagine life without you, Ryan," it was a moment of pure fulfillment. A year later, we were married. After more than a decade of effort, we finally succeeded in reviving Silver Sonnet. We had previously produced Sake with a 20% polishing ratio, and though it was expensive, it sold out immediately. However, something felt incomplete. Rachel and I agreed not to call it Silver Summit. It was missing something. Even though I'd never tasted the original Silver Summit fresh, I couldn't help but wonder, would this Sake, after 30 years, achieve that legendary flavor? Rachel had questioned why we couldn't just be satisfied with such a delicious brew. I almost gave in to her reasoning, but someone agreed with me. It was Rachel's grandfather. He had retired just a few years after Silver Summit's production had ceased. Through trial and error, he had developed and perfected the original Silver Summit and remembered its freshly brewed taste. Trusting both my instincts and his palate, I persevered. "This is Silver Summit," I said with a smile. When I smiled at her, Rachel nodded slowly. "Now I understand why you couldn't settle for anything less. This is on a completely different level. I wish Grandpa could taste it too." Her grandfather was currently hospitalized and prohibited from drinking alcohol. "Do you think knowing Silver Summit has been revived might give him some strength?" I asked. With my words, Rachel chuckled softly. "I think so. He might even try to escape the hospital to come celebrate. I hoped he would recover and live a long, healthy life. After all, Sake truly is the elixir of life. I hoped those words would become a reality someday. Our kids, they're still in elementary school now, but I'd love for them to try this when they turn 20. I said, thinking about the future and imagining our children, who were probably hard at work in school at that moment. Yes, we'll have to make sure Silver Summit doesn't disappear after just a few years again. We need to sell it properly this time, Rachel declared, rolling up her sleeves with determination. We shared the newly completed Silver Summit with everyone at the brewery. Seeing their joyful, contented expressions filled both Rachel and me with happiness. I wanted as many people as possible to experience the profound sense of fulfillment that one cup of steak could bring. With that thought in my heart, I watched everyone's smiling faces, feeling deeply connected to this shared moment of joy.